On the surface level, Stardew Valley appears to be a very cheerful and charming farming simulator where you pet your cows, plant your crops, and exploit your pigs to make you more money than needed so that you can build this giant ass gold clock for some reason. But beyond the surface, there are many deep and dark secrets hidden and scattered throughout the game. Welcome to the dark side of Stardew Valley. Now the first couple stories in this video are relatively known throughout Stardew Valley, so if you're sick of hearing these stories, just bear with me because later in the video I'll go through some more interesting stuff. Also, if you stick around long enough, then you'll be able to hear from our mysterious special guest. Anyway, the story starts with Pierre. Pierre is the owner of the general store in Pelican Town, Stardew Valley. Now Pierre is married to Caroline and has one daughter, Abigail, but it is heavily implied throughout the game that Abigail is actually not the daughter of Pierre, but in fact the illegitimate child of the wizard. At 8 hearts, Pierre gains new dialogue where he states, "Does Abigail look anything like me? Don't tell my wife, but sometimes I wonder if I'm really the father." Caroline also has some 8-heart dialogue of her own where she states, "When we first moved into Pelican Town, I would take secret walks to the wizard's tower. Don't tell Pierre, he has jealousy issues. Abigail was born about a year after we moved into Pelican Town. I wonder if she ever experienced a life outside the valley." Now the wizard also has some interesting dialogue at 10 hearts where he states, "You mustn't tell anyone, but I have reason to believe that one of the locals is actually my daughter. I could be mistaken. It's rare, but it does happen." Now I kind of understand why Pierre would have jealousy issues if his wife was taking secret walks to another man's house when they first moved into town. Caroline did say that Abigail was born about a year after they moved into Pelican Town, and 9 months isn't exactly a year, but I wouldn't be surprised if Caroline was still taking these secret walks to the wizard's tower 3 or 4 months after they moved in. I also remember Abigail saying at one point in the game that she can't remember the last time she dyed her hair purple. I looked through the wiki and I couldn't find this exact line of dialogue. However, I did find some Reddit posts that mentioned the exact same thing, so I don't think my brain was imagining things, and I'm pretty sure this is true. There is a 6-heart cutscene with Pierre where you sneak into his bedroom when he's not there and you look behind his bookcase to find his secret stash. Pierre immediately realizes someone is in his bedroom, so he hurries in to find who is in the room. He's not very happy and he tells you to give him back his secret stash. You give him back his secret stash, and from here on out you get 2 dialogue options. In the first one you say you're going to keep it a secret, and in the second one you say something along the lines of, "Your wife deserves to know about this." Depending on what option you pick, he's obviously happy or sad, and he calls you a terrible person if you say you're going to tell his wife. That you never do, you never tell his wife, but you know, what he doesn't know won't hurt him. Anyway, there is no concrete evidence on what this secret stash could be, but it could possibly be adult magazines or drugs of some sort. I believe the first possibility more to be true because he doesn't want his wife knowing about it, but you can decide for yourself. This cutscene is nothing huge, but it's just another indicator of how many little secrets are swept under the rug in Stardew Valley. Now when I first thought of this idea for this video, I thought I would find heaps of stuff about how terrible Joja Mart is, but if I'm being honest, the more I looked, the more I found that Joja Mart really isn't that bad, and Pierre is a really big arsehole. Sure, Joja Mart is a giant corporate entity that competes with a smaller local shopfront, but the thing is, they never put Pierre out of business. And if you really think about it, Joja Mart does not kill animals, abuse humans, harm the environment, or anything else immoral. In fact, Joja Mart positively affects the economy of Pelican Town as it employs 2 of the townsfolk, Shane and Sam, and it gives a direct competitor to Pierre. Now, not only does giving a direct competitor to Pierre give the inhabitants of the town more variety of choice on what to buy, but it encourages sales from the 2 shops. And if something is a lower price, then not only are people happy about it, but they are also more likely to buy more of that product. So the seller benefits because they make money from items being sold, and the customer benefits from the lower than usual prices and variety of choice when shopping. So if you really want to place your anger in someone, place it in Morris, because he is actually a really big arsehole. But the thing is, because Morris is the manager of the local Joja Mart, it gives Joja Mart a bad reputation, because people subconsciously think of Morris as Joja Mart instead of someone who works for Joja Mart. This is because their competitor Pierre is a person that runs the general store. So when you think of the general store in Pelican Town, you think of it as Pierre's store. So when people see Morris as the manager of the local Joja Mart, they think of it as Morris's store, because it's easier to comprehend the whole Joja Mart vs Pierre battle this way. Now, I'm not letting Joja Mart entirely off the hook here, because not only in the opening cutscene is there a guide found dead at his computer in skeleton form because no one has checked over there in so long, but because Joja Mart also dabbles in mining. Not only is mining very bad for the environment and all that stuff, but the reason why George can't walk isn't because he is old and frail, but because he had an accident in a coal mine 30 years ago, which resulted in him being wheelchair bound. This could be a mere coincidence, but George could have been contracted under Joja Corp when he had this accident, which would reflect badly on the work and health and safety regulations among Joja corporations. Now, this all falls apart when you realize that George is at fault for the mining accident, not the corporation behind it, but it's still something to think about. Now, I did call Pierre an arsehole just a minute ago, so I'll go over that now. Pierre has a strained relationship with his daughter Abigail due to him being oppressive of her ideologies, and he takes credit when you sell him high quality crops and forage, pretends that they're his own, and dismisses it when they're bad quality crops. But that's far from the worst of it. Out of his 42 dialogue encounters, a whopping 35 are about making money at his shop in some form, and 5 of these 7 non-related dialogues are about him either confessing his insecurities or talking about how good he was back in the good old days. His event dialogues aren't any better either, with 4 out of 6 of his accessible dialogue options are talking about the store too. The worst thing for me though is this one piece of dialogue. My dreams to keep opening new stores until I become extremely wealthy. Hehe. So you're telling me he complains about owning his small little poor shop that is soon going to go out of business by this new large corporate entity in town, which is a lie by the way because it never goes out of business, but then he says he wants to become the mega corporation by opening all these different storefronts until he becomes filthy rich himself. So he's practicing exactly what he's preaching against. Pierre got to be the biggest hypocritical fictional character I've ever seen. I also forgot to mention that there's this new cutscene, I'm pretty sure it's new from the 1.5 update, but basically it shows how much of an arsehole Pierre really is. I'll leave this video down in the description just so you can see it. The person who narrates over it is pretty funny, so go watch that after this video. Lewis, the mayor of the town, is in a secret relationship with Marnie, the owner of the ranch south of your farm where you can buy animals from. The first sign of this relationship is in Marnie's normal dialogue where she states, "I think someone in the town has a liking to me. Hehe." But the next sign of this relationship is much more revealing. If you have both Marnie and Mayor Lewis at 6 hearts, and you enter the town between 7 PM and 11 PM, a cutscene will trigger. In this cutscene, Lewis and Marnie are discussing their secret relationship and how Lewis wants to keep it secret for sake of his job, while you just stand to the side, eavesdropping on the conversation until they realize someone is over there. Once you reveal yourself, you are given 2 dialogue options. You can either say that you're going to tell the whole town, or keep it a secret. If you say that you're going to tell the whole town, then Mayor Lewis will break down into tears. I think it's pretty funny that Mayor Lewis, a man who has never been married before, thinks that having a relationship is going to ruin or affect his job, especially considering that the bus is broken down, and when it is up and running, it's driven by the town drunk. The community center is in ruins, the last museum curator ran off with all the gems and artifacts, he can't provide proper housing for 2 of the town's residents, and there is literal trash everywhere. I don't know about you, but I think Lewis is just making up excuses because he wants to hit it and quit it. If you go to Mayor Lewis's room, which you need 2 hearts to do so, and you look around, you will eventually find a note that reads, "Won't you come by tomorrow night? If you come through the back window, no one will notice. I'd like to see you more often. I know you're busy, but can't you make time for me? I hope to see you tomorrow. M." Now, because of the information revealed in the cutscene I just talked about a second ago, we know that this mysterious M is in fact Marnie. I was gonna say something about how 2 adults that are still sneaking into each other's houses through the windows like they don't want their parents getting angry. It's pretty funny, but I'll leave that for the next bit of information because it gets even funnier. In the 1.3 update, Concerned Ape introduced the magnifying glass and secret notes. Once you have obtained the magnifying glass through a 2-part cutscene quest with Korobus, he will give you the magnifying glass which will allow you to find secret notes. Secret notes can be found by doing the usual activities like hoeing up artifact spots and breaking rocks in the mines or whatever. Now, Secret Note 21 gives you a very cryptic clue, but if you decipher it correctly, it tells you to interact with this bush at exactly 12:40 PM at night. Yep, that's right. These 2 adults that are probably 40 to 50 years old plus, that both have 2 homes, no kids or significant others, are sneaking through windows to greet each other and are hiding in random bushes together at almost 1 AM at night. I'm just ashamed at this point, but it gets even worse. On the 3rd of summer year 1, Mayor Lewis will send you a letter in which he tells you to discreetly retrieve his lost purple underwear and give it back to him. Keyword here being discreetly. Now, where could Mayor Lewis's lost purple shorts be? Robin's house? No. Haley's house? No. It's of course in Marnie's room. You can give Lewis his purple shorts back for a very little reward of 750 gold, but you can also do a little trolling with them. In the Lure Festival, if you put them into the community soup, then you get a very entertaining cutscene where the governor almost dies and Lewis gets very angry and embarrassed. You can also put them in the Grange display for the whole town to see them. If you do put Lewis's shorts on your Grange display and you talk to Marnie, you will get some unique dialogue. That was some strange looking purple lettuce in the Grange display. I swear, it looked just like Mayor Lewis's special art. Oh, never mind. Once Lewis has inspected your Grange display, talk to him and he will angrily state, was this some kind of sick prank? Those are very private. Here, take 750 star tokens and don't tell a soul. Now go clean up your box and bring me my item. Tomorrow. Now I don't think he realizes that I put them on display for the entirety of the town to see, so it doesn't matter if I don't tell anyone because everyone already knows about them. But as you might have been able to tell by now, Lewis isn't exactly the sharpest tool in the shed. But it's not all L's for my boy Lewis. Most nights Lewis is sneaking into Marnie's house through her window or whatever, but on this one Tuesday night, the night the fall, he's feeling like the man because at 5:30 PM, he walks into Marnie's kitchen and cooks dinner. Then at 9:20 PM, he heads directly to Marnie's bed and doesn't lay next to her, but on top of her for the entirety of the night. So I think they were doing some wrestling, if you know what I mean. Marnie also has this really rare dialogue that she has a 0.01% chance to say when you enter her shop. The dialogue reads, "When the door opened, I thought it might be Lewis." Okay, I know I've been exposing Mayor Lewis for quite a bit of this video so far, and it might be getting a little boring, but this is the last bit of the video where I completely defecate on Mayor Lewis. At least for a while, so bear with me. Anyway, I talked about Secret Note 21 not too long ago, but there is another secret note that exposes Lewis, which is Secret Note 19. This note too is very cryptic, but if you manage to decipher it, then it basically tells you to go around to the back of Mayor Lewis's house and interact with everything until you find the solid gold Lewis statue. If you place it in the town for all to see, and it's not destroyed by one of the NPCs walking through it, then you will receive a letter from Mayor Lewis where he tells you not to tell anyone about his project. And he of course gives you another 750 gold for hush money. After this has happened, the statue either has a 10% chance to appear in Marnie's room, or a 90% chance to appear in Mayor Lewis's room. The statue in town will be replaced with a rotten plant. You can keep doing this and the statue will keep returning to either Marnie's or Mayor Lewis's room, but there won't be any more letters or hush money. Now this may seem unrelated, but at first I thought Pelican Town was a tax haven because, well, you the farmer, one of the people that contribute heavily to the economy of Pelican Town, does not have to pay tax. Taxes were once in Stardew Valley, or at least experimented with, but never fully implemented into a public version of the game, so I kind of forgot about them. But then I found this line of dialogue from Lewis. Tax collection, mumble. Spring festival expenses, mumble. Yes, in this line of dialogue, he is clearly mumbling to himself about the expenses of running the spring festival and taxes, which means not only is he building golden statues of himself, but he also makes golden statues of himself out of taxpayer money. This also means that everyone in the town, including probably the mayor, has to pay taxes, except you, the player. The millionaire of the town doesn't have to pay taxes just like in real life. Now there might just be corporate tax in Pelican Town, but with all the millions that you can be making and all the products that you are selling, I feel like you would have to be counted as some sort of business. So the question still remains, how far does the corruption in Pelican Town run?
Hey folks, I'm Wallagoog. I also do Stardew Valley stuff. You wanna check me out? I'm just here doing a little bit of scripting for Mossy, so here we go. The Ferngill Republic is the nation that Stardew Valley is located in, and the Ferngill Republic is at war with a nation located across the Gem Sea called the Gotoro Empire. Now Kent, an NPC that comes back to Pelican Town at the start of Year 2, was forced to fight as a soldier for the Ferngill Republic. And just like most soldiers that have to fight in war, Kent was held in a prisoner of war camp for some time and now has severe PTSD. Like for example, whenever you give him something that he hates, he will say, "This. They gave me this as the Gotoro prison camp. I've been trying to forget about that. Shudder." Or if you talk to him at the flower dance, he has some sad dialogue where he states, "This open field, it makes me nervous." Whisper, "Happy thoughts, Kent. Happy thoughts." His biggest PTSD episode, however, comes in the form of his 3-heart cutscene. As you enter Kent's house, the cutscene starts off with Kent's wife Caroline making popcorn on the stove. She greets you as you walk in, but then Kent comes running along in, shouting at his wife, "That sound." should have known that sound would remind me of the war. Kent then goes on a long talk about the loss of his friends, and even though popcorn used to be his favorite, things have changed, and he says he's a different man from when he first left. Jodi then whispers to you, asking if you can say something to break the deafening silence. Regardless of which dialogue option you choose, Kent apologizes to his wife for verbally lashing out at her. However, if you choose a rude cutscene option, then he will actually get angry at you also. The last PTSD related thing Mossy could find is this sadly oblivious piece of dialogue from Vincent. That seems weird since he came back. I wondered what happened to him. He doesn't play with me anymore. Poor Vincent and poor Kent. Truly disturbing that he had to go through this. And also thanks for Mossy for having me on.
Now I could have just ended the video with the Kent segment, but I thought I would add this Jodi segment as well because she is married to Kent, so her problems tie in nicely with Kent. These problems being that she is depressed and wants to leave her family because she got married too early in her life. At first, Jodi seems kind of busy because, you know, she is a mum and all that stuff, but then you realize that 10 of her 13 combined summer, fall and winter dialogues are about something related to doing lots of work, or something to do with her kids. She also has this alarming dialogue of, what do I do for fun? That's a good question. I like sleeping, and I don't know about you, but that's exactly what a depressed person would say. But at 6 Hearts, Jodi gets much more specific and personal. It's nice to have a family, but I'd be lying if I said I never longed for the freedom of youth. Where does all the time go? Sigh. I remember when Sam was a young little baby wearing diapers. He was such a cute kid. Don't tell him I said that. You must really like talking to me, huh? Sometimes I dream about life of my own, without a family to look after. Is that horrible? Don't tell anyone. And then at 8 Hearts, she gains these 2 extra dialogues. I had a dream that I had complete freedom, no obligation to anyone but myself. Then I woke up and realized I had a full day of house chores ahead of me. And this last dialogue confirms what I said earlier at the start of this segment. We kind of rushed into our marriage. With Kent being a soldier and all, I hardly got a taste for youth and freedom, and now it's too late to ever go back. Just don't make the same mistake. Now I know Jodi is a fictional character, but she is a very well written one, and I think that we can all learn a lesson from her story. In Pelican Town, there are 2 little kids. One of them is called Vincent and the other is called Jazz. Now I mentioned Vincent very briefly when I was talking about Kent's PTSD in the first Dark Side of Stardew Valley video, but I'm not going to be talking about Vincent any longer because he isn't very interesting. However, Jazz is pretty interesting because not much is known about her, but what we do know is that she lives with her Aunt Marnie because both of her parents died of unknown causes, and that Shane is her godfather. Now Shane is Jazz's godfather because he was good friends with Jazz's parents, but surprisingly his aunt is also Marnie. Now because of the age gap and the fact that Shane was good friends with Jazz's parents, they can't be siblings, but they are both related to Marnie, so they must be cousins. But the thing is, if Marnie is the aunt of both Shane and Jazz, then that means that Jazz's parents were also Shane's auntie and uncle, and Shane is Jazz's godfather because he was friends with Jazz's parents. But this doesn't really make much sense to me, because for example, I don't introduce my uncle as my friend. I introduce him as my uncle because, well, he is my uncle and not my friend. So I thought that the game would introduce Shane as her cousin, not godfather. Shane is probably just labelled as Jazz's godfather because he has legal custody over Jazz, but something still doesn't seem quite right here, like I'm missing a part of the puzzle. But then again, nothing is ever quite right in Pelican Town. Also, something funny I just want to point out about the whole Jazz situation is that in Jazz's bedroom there is a dollhouse, and in this dollhouse her whole family is sitting around the dinner table except her grandfather, who is wedged under the table. Now you can make your own mind up about this, but I think that this probably alludes to Lewis's secret relationship with Marnie that I went in depth into in the Dark Side of Stardew Valley Part 1, and how Jazz is at least somewhat aware of it, which means that Lewis and Marnie can't even hide their relationship from a somewhat innocent child. That's just sad. Shane is the character that acts very rudely towards you when you first move into Pelican Town. Some of his regular 0 Heart dialogue includes, I don't know you. Why are you talking to me? What do you want from me? Go away. No, I don't have time to chat with you. What do you want from me? Money? I'd give you a pot of gold to leave me alone. And the list goes on and on. However, if you speak to him enough, then he does eventually go on to say, hey, sorry if I came off as rude when we first met. It takes me a while to warm up to strangers, which is the first sign of him not being a horrible person, but just being a horribly depressed one. The next sign of him being a horribly depressed person is his second heart cutscene. The cutscene starts off with Shane standing at the edge of a dock, drinking and looking into the darkness of the night. You then realize Shane is there and approach him. After a couple of words, Shane starts to go into detail about his depression and how it feels to him. You ever feel like, no matter what you do, you're gonna fail? Like you're stuck in some miserable abyss and you're so deep you can't even see the light of day. I just feel like no matter how hard I try, I'm not strong enough to climb out of the hole. Honestly, Concerned Ape, you're a great writer. If that just rhymed, then it would have sounded like an unreleased Juice WRLD song and a half. Anyway, you down some beer, Shane tells you not to make a habit of it, like he did, and then the cutscene ends after Shane jokingly says his liver is begging him to stop drinking for the night. Pleasant stuff. Shane's 4-heart cutscene, however, is the first time we really get to see the consequences of his depression and alcohol abuse. The scene starts off with you walking into Shane's room and seeing him passed out on the floor surrounded by beer cans. So it's obvious that he drank heaps of beer until he eventually passed out. Marnie is a bit worried by this, so you use your watering can to wake him up. Once awake, Marnie remarks that all Shane does is mope around and drink beer. She then starts questioning Shane about his purpose in life and his plans for the future. And Shane responds to that with, I won't be around long enough to need a plan. Jazz overhears this and runs off crying. Marnie goes out of the room to comfort Jazz and Shane breaks down into tears. Overall, this cutscene is a pretty sad reality of what some people's lives are truly like. However, Shane's 6-heart cutscene is definitely the worst in a sense of his struggles with depression and alcohol abuse. The cutscene starts off with you entering Cindersap Forest and seeing Shane laying face down at the edge of a cliff, visibly drunk. Shane then starts to talk about how his life is a pathetic joke, and how no matter what he does, he seems unable to grasp a hold of it. He then suggests that he should just roll off these cliffs and, ultimately, end his life. However, just like usual, he's too scared and anxious to do so. Shane then asks you why he shouldn't just roll off this cliff right now, and the game gives you 4 options. No matter what option you pick, you save Shane from potentially ending his life, and he asks you to help him over to Harvey's clinic. Once in the clinic, Harvey assures you he's stabilized Shane's physical condition and that he'll be fine. However, Harvey is concerned about Shane's mental health, and he recommends that Shane should see a counselor in Zuzu City once he's better. So yeah, as I said, this is definitely the most impactful cutscene Shane has in the game, and for some people it may even be the most impactful cutscene in the entirety of Stardew Valley, as his next 6-heart cutscenes are all positive ones and are mostly about him healing from his anxiety, depression, and alcohol abuse. In Stardew Valley, there is Shane, the depressed alcoholic, and then there is the typical town drunk, Pam. Pam lives in a literal trailer with her daughter Penny, and her daily schedule goes a little something like this. 8 AM, lounges on a couch in the trailer. 12 PM, leaves the trailer and heads to Joja Mart. 4 PM, leaves Joja Mart and heads to the saloon. 12 AM, leaves the saloon and heads home. And this schedule does not change depending on what day of the week it is, what the weather is like, or what the season is like. This is the same depressing schedule she follows every single day. Well, except for the 25th of spring, because that is her annual checkup day at the doctor's, and it seems physically impossible for the characters in Stardew Valley to miss their annual checkup day. But Pam's schedule didn't used to be that bad, because before you arrived in Pelican Town, the bus used to be up and running. But then one day, the bus broke down and Pam had to return to her habitual job of being a full-time alcoholic, as Mayor Lewis claimed that there's not enough money in the town's coffers or else you'd have it fixed. Yep, that's right, Mayor Lewis, the man that builds secret solid gold statues of himself, probably out of taxpayer money, says that there isn't enough money in the town's coffers to fix up a bus. A broken down bus. The depths of corruption that this man finds himself into seems to never end. But luckily for the town, you can put all the hard work in and restore the bus for a small price of 42,500 gold by completing the Vault bundle in the community center. Or you can restore the town bus for only 40,000 gold. And a large piece of your soul by signing away your life to Joja Corp and buying the bus repair option in the community developments projects at Joja Mart. Either way, it's your choice. But the most alarming thing about this whole Pam situation is the fact that the town drunk, that is notorious for being the town drunk, who seems to never be 100% sober, asked Mayor Lewis to put her life on the line and others by becoming the town bus driver. Lewis agreed to this, and when the bus inevitably crashed, no investigations or anything that we know of happened, and then when Mayor Lewis was asked if he would fix up the bus so Pam could drive it again, he said he would if the town had enough money to do so. And once you fix up the bus by yourself, Pam is back driving it again. Like, what? No wonder the bus was originally broken down. She probably crashed it into something while she was drunk driving it. It is also important to note that Pam raised Penny as a single mother, as Penny's dad abandoned them both while Penny was still at a very young age. This was because he felt trapped. Probably because he had a child with an alcoholic mother who lived in a very poor socioeconomic standard. However, this might not have been the case. For all we know, Pam could have picked up alcoholism as a coping mechanism after Penny's father left. And the low socioeconomic conditions that they live in may be a consequence of this coping mechanism and the fact that Penny's father, who might have been the only one that had a job, left. Either way, this is no excuse for the fact that Penny's father left his family and left them in ruin. Also, something I want to say just before we get into the next segment is that although Pam is an alcoholic and she leaves Penny to do all the menial labor tasks around the house, the game seems to hint that Pam never lays a finger on Penny, so she never physically abuses her. In fact, to me, Pam is the type of person where if you mistreated or harmed Penny in any way, no matter your size or how dangerous you were, she would find you and beat the crap out of you, as she just loves her daughter that much. Now, as we just discussed 2 segments ago, Pam drives the bus to the desert once it has been repaired, and in the desert there are a couple of things, but the thing that we are going to be focusing on right now is the Oasis shop run by Sandy. The Oasis shop is a very small shop that sells basic things like mid/endgame seeds that you can't buy at Pierre's, some house vanity, and random stock items. But what makes this interesting isn't Sandy or her small shop, but it's actually what is in the back of her small shop. Because you see, when you enter the Oasis, there is Sandy at her counter, some non-interactable shelves, and a suspicious looking man dressed in all black. Now, if you go up to this particular suspicious looking man that's dressed in all black, then you'll see that he's actually called the Bouncer. But the Bouncer to what? Surely Sandy isn't voluntarily letting a mysterious person run a probably not legal casino at the back of a shop. Right, guys? Well, yeah, Sandy is actually doing exactly that. Like, just look at this piece of 4-heart dialogue. Hey, I can trust you. You can keep a secret, right? That guy in the back. It's some kind of exclusive club. I've never been inside myself, but they pay me a generous monthly rent, so I don't ask any questions. But if Sandy isn't running this exclusive club, then who is? Well, that person is Mr. Chi. You first come into contact with Mr. Chi by putting a battery pack in this box in the tunnel left of the bus stop. Mr. Chi then gives you 4 more quests in successive order before you finally acquire the club card. This club card gives you access to the probably not legal casino, where you finally meet Mr. Chi for the first time. And the casino is a pretty cool place, you know. You got the stat tracker, you got this guy who gives you these statues which aren't actually very good for 1,000,000 gold each, you got the token shop, you got the slot machines, you got the small blackjack table where you can only bet 100 tokens at. This is the table you go to if you're a little bitch. And then there's this blackjack table, where you go if you're a real man. Mr. Chi also appears in Skull Cavern, and he also appears on Ginger Island where you learn a little bit more about him. He also appears in the 1.5 added Summit completion cutscene, where you learn that he was actually a friend of your grandpa. Now, I haven't actually watched the Summit cutscene before because I got to like 94% completion, and then I stopped playing Stardew and instead started grinding out Stardew Valley videos. So I only know of Grandpa and Mr. Chi's relationship because of the wiki, so I can't add any more information to the topic of Mr. Chi and Grandpa's relationship because I simply do not have the knowledge to do so. So if anyone in the comments has watched the cutscene before and knows what happens in it, then you're welcome to tell me down below. So, in short, Sandy is this very lonely woman that runs a small shop called the Oasis in the desert, and at the back of her small shop there is a very shady and probably not legal casino being run by Mr. Chi that Sandy does know about but turns a blind eye to because they bribe her with what she considers a generous monthly rent. Yeah. Just when you thought this game couldn't get any more crazy, it does. Also, just before we move on to the next segment, I found something really funny about Sandy while searching through the game's code. According to Sandy herself, my name's not really Sandy, you know, it's just good for business. But everyone calls me Sandy anyway, so I've just gotten used to it. So yeah, you learn something new every day. In Stardew Valley, there are 9 different known races: humans, Genomos, goblins, shadow people, dwarves, fairies, elves, merpeople, and tundra dwellers. But the 2 races that we are going to be focusing on in this segment are dwarves and the shadow people. According to the Stardew Valley wiki, shadow people are beings that cannot stand the light, which kind of makes sense considering that they are called shadow people, and that whenever you meet one in game, they are always underground. For example, shadow shamans and shadow brutes can be found in levels 81 to 119 of the mines, and once unlocked, Krobus can be found in the sewer. Now, according to the not so famous M. Jasper, the dwarves call themselves Smolowanu, which translates to sky people. But the thing is that dwarves do not live in the sky. In fact, the only dwarf that appears in Stardew Valley lives in a cave next to the mines, which definitely isn't the sky. But don't worry, M. Jasper got us covered again. They theorize that dwarves are the remnants of a once advanced civilization whose interplanetary vehicle crashed on this planet long ago. I propose that this dwarvish spaceship bore down, deep underground, and over time, the dwarves became adapted to their new underground environment. My colleagues ask, why didn't they come above ground and live on the surface? Perhaps their old planet had a thicker atmosphere that protected them from stellar radiation, and they simply could not survive in our sunlight. That would explain why they only surface at night to take what they need from our houses. Now, this whole theory does make a lot of sense, especially when you consider all the other alien races and references throughout the game. Also, I don't mean to spoil the fun and uncertainty of theories, but this theory comes from one of the lost books in the library, which means that Concerned Ape himself wrote this piece of literature. So if the developer of the game wrote this theory himself, then it's probably true. When the dwarves crashed their spaceship deep underground, they encountered a problem, because you see, the shadow people were already there. In fact, it was their ancestral land, and now these new mysterious dwarf peoples had crashed on their ancestral lands, stranded with nowhere else to go. This is how the elemental wars started. The shadow people were not the violent type at first, but after being attacked by the dwarf people on their own lands, they were forced to resort to violence. It is unknown how long this war lasted and how many casualties there were, but the dwarf people and the shadow people now live in peace for the sake of the humans surrounding them. However, the shadow people and the dwarf people still do not like each other, as indicated by the dwarf's 50 friendship point cutscene with Krobus. The cutscene starts off with the dwarf and Krobus arguing in the sewers. Long story short, the dwarf isn't happy at Krobus being above the ground because the shadow people killed his family. Krobus explains to him that these tragic events only happened because the dwarf people drove his people out of their ancestral lands by force. He also apologizes for the loss of the dwarf's family straight after, but the dwarf isn't having it and he starts running at Krobus. As you enter the sewer, you find the dwarf and Krobus fighting, so you run in between them to break up the fight. The dwarf still struggles to get at Krobus, but then from out of nowhere, the wizard enters and seals them both to the ground with a spell. He then lectures them about how they must live at peace for the sake of the humans that surround them. The dwarf and Krobus both agree to keep peace, and then the wizard casts a seal of agreement to finalize the agreement. In this quick little segment, I wanted to point out some things that are integral to the Stardew Valley lore, or are interesting in some kind of way, but they aren't quite considered dark as such, so they aren't long enough to have their own segment. For the first one, we have Yoba. Yoba is the deity or god of Stardew Valley. There's nothing inherently dark about Yoba, but it is referenced throughout Stardew Valley a lot. And it is a literal god, so I thought I would briefly mention it. The Genomos are the little green apples that you first find in the community center. You will later go on to find out that the Genomos also go by the name of the elementals, and that they are nature beings that are integral to the Stardew Valley lore. Just like Yoba, there's nothing inherently dark about them. However, you can technically enslave their population with the help of the wizard, and you can systematically change the color of their skin depending on which item you put in their hut. But I think I'm just reading too far in between the lines here. There's nothing actually dark about the Genomos. Now, if you have ever played Stardew Valley before, then you will know Grandpa. Grandpa is literally the first NPC in the game that you were introduced to, and he is, now I know this may surprise you, your grandpa. Now, at the start of year 3, Grandpa comes back to haunt you, just like how you should haunt that subscribe button. I'm a disappointment to my family. Anyway, Grandpa doesn't actually haunt you. He comes back through your dreams to check up on how you're doing with the farm. And if you've done a good job, so you've ticked all of these boxes, he'll be happy and go away. But if you haven't ticked all of these boxes, then he'll be angry and be like, bro, why did you not fix up the farm? Like, no one likes you, you suck. Before eventually fading away. However, getting 4 candles on Grandpa's shrine does give you the statue of perfection, which gives you 2 to 8 iridium ore per day. So I would recommend you trying to get it. There are a lot of theories floating around the internet that are like, Grandpa's blue and he's a ghost, so that means Mr. Cheese a ghost because he's blue, right guys? And all that kind of stuff. And because none of these theories have any actual facts behind them, I just didn't include them in the video. But something that does have facts behind it is the fact that Grandpa and Mr. Chi were friends. However, just like I said before, I don't really know much about this, so if you could inform me on what's said in the summit cutscene between the two of them, then I would appreciate that. Clint represents that one guy we all know who has zero confidence and is really shy, and he probably thinks of himself as a bit of a nice guy, which is not good. Now, being a very shy and unconfident person, especially around women, isn't something that would really warrant him being in this video. However, I think we need to quickly go over his 6-heart cutscene, as it gets a little bit suspicious. The cutscene starts off with Clint hiding in a bush, watching Caroline and Emily talk. Now you see Clint watching them and you run up to him, and as you run up to him he admits that you caught him lacking and he explains that he was just at Emily's doorstep ready to ask her out on a date. But when he heard her coming to the door, he panicked and hid in a bush. So now he's waiting until Emily and Caroline stop talking because he's too scared to ask out Emily in front of Caroline. But knowing Clint, once Caroline walks away, he'll still probably be too scared to ask out Emily and he'll just stay in the bush that he's currently in. So what happens is that you tell Clint that if he does not get out of the bush and ask Emily out right now, then you will never upgrade your tools at Clint's again. And it works. Clint reluctantly goes up and asks out Emily, and she says yes, so everybody lives happily ever after the end. However, I've seen some people online call Clint a creep because he watched a woman from a bush. Now, I think that's a little bit out of context, as he was going to talk to Emily, got scared and hopped in the bush to wait. But like, even if he's just waiting for her, he's still watching a woman unknowingly from a bush. So yeah, it's still a little bit weird. He may be a little bit creepy, but that's for you to decide. In Pelican Town, there are 2 child inhabitants called Jazz and Vincent, and later in the game Leo joins the town. But like, nobody cares about Leo, so that's not really important. But what is important is that despite there being 2 children in the town, there is no form of school or place to receive some form of education. Now, this wouldn't be a problem if their parents just simply homeschooled them, but out of Kent, Jodi, Marnie, and I guess Shane, none of them homeschool their children. So really, nobody actually cares about the well-being and future of their kids in this town. However, Penny, the nicest NPC in Pelican Town, does. On Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, she educates them in the library, and she even goes out of her way to set up mini excursions, as shown in her 8-heart cutscene where she's giving them a field trip. So yes, that's right, after dealing with all the menial labor tasks around her house, she has to deal with her alcoholic mother and the lack of a father. And then after all of this, she then goes out of her way to take care of other people's children for them with 0 monetary incentive. Meaning she does all of this out of the kindness of her heart. I usually marry Abigail, so Penny's not the character I go for. However, any Penny slander in this comment section will not be tolerated, because she's like literally the nicest person ever. Alright, that's the end of the grey side of Stardew Valley. But remember, we still have our special guest coming up later in the video. So now, let's get on to the next segment. Sebastian lives at 24 Mountain Road, unsurprisingly in the mountains, with his mother Robin, his half-sister Maru, and his stepdad Demetrius. Now basically how this works is that Robin got married to a man that we don't have the identity of, and had a kid named Sebastian. Robin then broke up with this man for unknown reasons and then later married Demetrius. Robin and Demetrius then had a kid named Maru. So now Sebastian is Robin's original son, Demetrius is his stepdad, and Maru is his half-sister because they both have the same mother. But if we don't know the identity of Sebastian's biological father, then how do we know that this is actually Robin's second marriage? For all we know, something much worse could have happened to her, right? Well, luckily for us, ConcernedApe put some sneaky little hints into the game that basically confirm this is Robin's second marriage. Because if you sneak into Robin's room and you take a quick peek at the bookcase, then you'll find a book called Maximizing Your Second Marriage and another book called Practical Tips for First-Time Stepdads. Now the Practical Tips for First-Time Stepdads book is obviously for Demetrius, which is why I think that the other book, Maximizing Your Second Marriage, is for Robin, especially when you factor in Sebastian. but like, who knows? Maybe Robin never got married in the first place and maximizing his second marriage book is actually for Demetrius. Also, something about this family I wanted to point out before I move on to the next segment is that Sebastian feels like his stepfather Demetrius treats him somewhat unfairly. This is indicated by his two winter dialogues here. I built a snow goon, but Demetrius made me get rid of it. What's his problem? And I built a snow goon, but Demetrius made me get rid of it. Yet Maru's cute little snowman goes unharmed. Ridiculous. Sebastian also has a piece of autumn dialogue about his distaste for his father. Who does Demetrius think he is? Telling me what to do. He's not even my real father. And that piece of dialogue makes me think that Sebastian's issue with his stepfather Demetrius goes a little deeper than just the removal of his snowman. Sebastian also has a strained relationship with his half-sister Maru, a relationship that Maru herself wishes was better.
Hey yo, it's Yama. I also make some cool Stardew content if you want to check me out afterwards. Okay, let's talk about Alex and how he fits into the dark side of Stardew Valley. Alex is a young man with big dreams, one of which is becoming a sports superstar. He also happens to live with his grandparents, George and Evelyn. But why does this seemingly independent young man live with his grandparents? Well, it's because of debt. You see, Alex had a very rough start to life. Early on, he had to deal with an abusive father who drank all night, degraded him, and called him worthless. And when he wasn't emotionally damaging his child's mental state, Alex's father was gone, completely absent from his life. And one day, Alex's father did exactly that. He got up and downright left, for good. Soon after that, Alex's mother Clara got sick, and the rest of the story resides in the heartbreaking letter on Evelyn's nightstand. Mama. If you're reading this, it means I've passed on. I'm so sorry you had to go through this. Know that I love you both. Don't be too upset. I'm with Yoba now. My final request, take care of Alex. He needs a family, something stable. He's a good kid. Love, Clara. On another note, Dusty, the town dog, also appears in two of Alex's heart events. This is because he feels a deep connection with him and is the only other being left that has experienced Alex's traumatic past home life.
Okay, so this is really some like level 1 type stuff. I don't know how I ever missed this in the first or second part of the Dark Side series, but yeah. In this segment, we're going to be looking at Leah, or more specifically, Leah's ex. Leah is one of the town's bachelorettes who lives in a small cottage just outside of Pelican Town. Now, I'll talk about her odd place of residence and financial situation later in the video, but for now, we need to look at Leah's main overarching theme. Basically, Leah is an artist who makes art purely for the love of it. However, she struggles to gain any attention for her work and as a result struggles to maintain a living. So really, Leah is kind of like a modern representation of a starving artist. However, this segment isn't about Leah's financial / living situation. That's for later. Right now, we're looking at Leah's relationship with her toxic ex, Kel. Now, yes, for this, we are starting at Leah's 4th heart cutscene, as we are only going to be looking at cutscenes that are relevant to Kel. Anyway, Leah's 4th heart event starts off with you walking into Leah's house just as she's calling her ex, Kel, that she doesn't want to move back to the city and that he should just stop calling her. She then turns around, gets surprised by your entry, and asks if you overheard anything. After you explain that you overheard the ending of the call, Leah says that she was just on the phone with her ex, Kel, and explains how they used to have an apartment together back in the city. While Leah was living back in the city, she would work all day doing different jobs and then come home and work all night on her art. However, Kel would always be nagging Leah to go back to school and study something like medicine so that they would have enough money and be able to afford a normal life. Leah, however, of course did not like this idea at all. Living a normal mortgage, kids, and marriage life in the city was not for her. Damn, she liked me for real. And so, she came to Pelican Town to pursue her dream of being an artist. Once Leah has finished telling you all of this, you then get to pick one of 5 dialogue options. If you pick one of these 3, then yeah, she of course gets angry at you. But if you choose one of these 2 options, then Leah will thank you for being able to confide in you. Regardless of what option you pick, Leah goes on to tell you about how she's considering showing her art at the town's next showcase. So yeah, that was Leah's 4th heart event, which was necessary for me to show you so that you get a deeper grasp on Leah's character and a brief understanding of who Kel is. Now yes, once again we're skipping both of Leah's 6th heart cutscenes as they are simply just romance building scenes, and so we will instead focus on Leah's 8th heart cutscenes as this is where the real story lies. Anyway, this cutscene starts off in the middle of the town square where the town is gathered around multiple sculptures, with everyone having a good time. except for this one random NPC standing off to the side of the event with his arms crossed. Now, who might this random NPC that we've never seen in any other part of the town or game before be? Well, that will be revealed in the next hard event that we look at, but yes, it's exactly who you think it is. But yeah, anyway, Leah greets you and thanks you for coming before addressing everyone in the crowd and doing the exact same. After some artsy yapping, Leah explains her intentions behind her sculptures and then once again thanks you for coming as you were the motivating reason behind her doing this show. The town then goes on to appreciate her art before the bidding process starts and the camera pans to the right while the scene fades to black. Now clearly, nothing too deep or personal was revealed in this cutscene. However, I have shown you it as it is integral to this next and final Leah Hart cutscene. This cutscene starts off in Cindersap Forest with you walking up to Leah who has set up a picnic in the middle of the woods. Leah's pretty happy with herself as this picnic was actually a surprise and she goes on to tell you about the food that she prepared for you. This is a vegetable medley with my special spice blend and this is a fresh salad made from greens that I foraged right here in the forest. But then, all of a sudden, Leah cuts the crap and starts telling you how she truly feels. Farmer, I just want to say thank you for helping me get one step closer to becoming a real artist. To which she then moves in for a kiss, that you of course take. However, as soon as you two embrace, you hear a distant voice start talking. Well, 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 what do we have here? To which a particular person comes stomping out of the greenery from above. Kel? Leah exclaims. What the heck are you doing here? Didn't you see me at the art show? I came all the way from Zuzu City to see your sculptures, and to get you to come back with me. I want things to get back to the way they were. I miss you, babe. To which Leah rightfully responds with, yuck, don't call me that. You never supported my art before. Now that I've had some success, you want me back? You make me sick. And then she starts walking away from Kel. And so Kel shouts, hey, come here. Now, because Kel is harassing your new girl, you quickly walk up to him and get confronted with two options. Punch Kel in the face and try to reason with him. If you punch him in the face, then Kel instantly falls to the ground. Leah exclaims that that was violent. However, Kel won't be bothering us anymore, and the two of you run away happily ever after. However, thankfully, if you try and reason with Kel, then he probably tries to say some dumb shit again, and as a result, Leah punches Kel right in the face instead. So yes, this was a pretty nice ending to Leah's troubles with her art and troubles with her ex. Now, honestly, I've never gone for Leah. However, after taking a deeper dive into her character, I definitely respect her, and I can confidently say that she is one of, if not the best written bachelorette/bachelor in the game. Her troubles with artistic expression are also pretty relatable to me as well. In the 1.5 update, Ginger Island was introduced, and so were these three mysterious looking NPCs. Now, we're looking at these two in the next two segments, so just forget about them for a second. The one that we're going to be focusing on right now is this elderly woman named Birdie. Birdie lives in a small hut on Ginger Island, and you first meet her while exploring the west side of Ginger Island. Now, yes, the first time that she meets you, she kind of gets a little bit surprised that there's another human around on the island, as she hasn't seen a visitor in many moons. Like, in her own words, she is almost forgot what other people looked like. Now, after the initial shock wears off, Birdie tells you how her husband was the captain of the ruined ship on the shore of the beach. However, as you can imagine, because, you know, the ruined ship, Birdie's husband has been dead for many years. And so nowadays she is instead left guarding his bones. She does, however, give you an item called the War Memento, while wistfully asking if you could find a memento of her long lost husband. Now, obviously, you have to give the War Memento to Kent. Duh. However, the problem here is that this is actually the longest quest chain in the game. And so, let me just quickly run you through it. So, you have to give the War Memento to Kent, who gives you the Gourmet Tomato Salt that you have to give to Gus, who then gives you a Stardew Valley Rose that you give to Sandy, because remember, she's not currently in Stardew Valley, duh. Who gives you a TV remote, which you then give to George, again, duh. He's the only fucking person in this game that uses a TV. Then George gives you a fucking Arctic Shard. Yes, an Arctic Shard. Where the fuck did he get that from? Which you give to the wizard, who gives you a Wriggling Worm, which you of course have to give to Willie, who finally gives you the Pirate's Locket. And then you just throw the Pirate's Locket in the trash. It's just fucking garbage. No, I'm just joking. What you actually have to do is, of course, give it to Birdie, who gives you fairy dust in return. Yes, fucking fairy dust. Like, what do you think this is, Birdie? Fairy Tale Land? Well, yes, it actually might be Fairy Tale Land or something, because fairy dust instantly finishes any item that you use it on. For example, if I have 54 casks full of ancient fruit wine, usually I'd have to wait 54 days for that wine to turn into iridium quality wine. It might not actually be 54, it might be like 56 days or something. I don't really care, I kind of just forgot off the top of my head. However, if you simply sprinkle a little fairy dust, just literal fairy dust, over these products, then they will be instantly finished. Also, I'm not actually sure if this cast example works. I'm pretty sure it does, but if it doesn't, I just kind of look stupid. But yeah, fairy dust just finishes anything that you use it on instantly, and as a result, well, the residents of Stardew Valley might be living in fairy tale land or something, I don't know. Now, I may have said in my last Dark Side of Stardew Valley video that I do not care about Leo at all. In Pelican Town, there are two child inhabitants called Jazz and Vincent, and later in the game, Leo joins the town. But like, nobody cares about Leo, so that's not really important. But he does kind of fit the criteria to be in this video, so unfortunately, I do have to put him in. Basically, you first meet Leo on Ginger Island, where he reveals to you that his parents were lost at sea, and he now considers the parrots that inhabit the island as his family. Oh man, that's so fucking sad. Initially though, he is too shy to speak to the player until the player makes friends with the parrots, which is done by giving 10 golden walnuts to the first parrot outside by the turtle. Yes, the comically large turtle that's blocking your path. Duh. Now, after you've done this, Leo will finally open up to you and tell you all the information that I just told you about. The next few of Leo's cutscenes are also pretty sad, as they show Leo's struggles with loneliness and also his hardships of reintegrating into society. For example, in Leo's 4th heart event, he has trouble forming normal words, as he has spent the last couple of years of his short life speaking in squawks to communicate with his parrot friends. Fortunately though, Leo's story only gets better on from here on out, as after you gain 6 hearts with Leo, Linus invites him back to Pelican Town to stay with him, where Leo starts living in a literal treehouse, and a pretty cool one at that. And after he comes to Pelican Town, Penny starts tutoring him and taking him on trips with Jazz and Vincent, the other children in the town. And so, eventually, he does settle down and properly reintegrate back into society as a child. So now you're probably thinking, you were hating on a young lost boy who was seeking refuge on an mostly abandoned island after his parents died at sea. Well, yeah, that's exactly what I did. Yo, someone put that in the Dark Side of Mossy video. Actually, on that train of thought, what if we further dramatize that video by calling it something, I don't know, like Mossy Exposed? Oh wait, no, I'm crazy. What am I saying? That's actually already a video on my channel that you can just watch right now. Also, it's funny how young I look in the thumbnail of that, because I cut my hair and shaved like just before that, so I looked very different. Like, this is me a couple months later, and this is me on that thumbnail. Like, these look like two different people. Now, that is Leo's story, and I've already told you Birdie's story, but there's actually one more person on this island. That person being Professor Snail. Professor Snail is initially trapped in a cave behind a boulder until you blow it up and let him out. Now, after you blow it up and rescue him, he essentially becomes Ginger Island's Gunther, as when you rescue him, he explains that he has been sent here on an archaeological mission, and so he now runs a mini museum from his tent. But unlike Birdie or Leo, Professor Snail does not give extensive information on his background, so nothing about his past or anything. Professor Snail honestly becomes as mysterious as Gunther, as Gunther and Professor Snail both only give you one piece of information about them. The one piece? The one piece is real. In fact, after his initial cutscene with you, all that Professor Snail ever states is that he has been conducting a survey of the island's flora and fauna for a year. And that's it. The rest of his dialogue just gives you clues and hints on how to find different artifacts hidden around the island. But for me, all this does is prompt some very concerning questions. Like 1, he spent a year on the island or so does he know about Birdie? Does he know that some random old lady is living on the opposite side of the island mourning the loss of her dead husband? And if not, if he doesn't know about Birdie, has he seen the shipwreck? Has he checked it out? Has he noted it? Has he explored it? Has he found any treasure? Does he just know anything about it at all? 3, I understand it's a big island, but he's on a discovery mission. So has he not realized that there's a literal orphan child living not too far away from him? 4, in all the archaeological findings that he's done, has he not found a single island scrap note, as those notes are written down by some explorer? And if he found one, it would kind of prompt more questions like, oh, if people explored this before, how many people have been there? These notes are old, how long have they been here for, etc. Also, the notes detail some of the more secret things hidden within the island. And now, 5, why the hell is he alone? Like, I know Ginger Island isn't the most dangerous island of all time, but still, to the outside world, it's probably considered as uninhabited, unless the location of the old woman and the orphan boy are just known and nobody gives a fuck about them. That seems kind of illegal, I feel like. So like, just for this to make sense, I'm going on the assumption that it's an uninhabited island to Professor Snail and whoever sent him here's knowledge. And with that knowledge in mind, like, I wouldn't send one person, only one, on a discovery mission to an uninhabited island. I would be bringing at least like a small team or something. Like, you just don't know what's out there and what could go wrong, especially when you're alone on a practically deserted and probably uncharted island too. Doesn't seem very safe. And number 6, also, if we flip the question on its head, does Leah know about the old lady or the professor guy on the island? Does the old lady know about the orphan boy or the professor guy on the island? Like, I would assume not, but there are really some more concerning assumptions that could be made from this. So really, it does seem like there are some gaping plot holes in how they interact / coexist with each other. But hey, I guess that's what I get for looking way too deep into something that wasn't supposed to be looked at in the first place. Originally, this was a scrap segment from the Dark Side of Stardew Valley Part 2, as that video was already long enough, and I didn't think this segment had enough information to warrant it. However, I have since looked into it again and found more details, so here we go. Basically, I never really thought about it, probably until I read some random Reddit post or comment or something like that, but there's actually a level of poverty in Pelican Town. Most of what we're going to be looking at is some like lower middle class type financial problems. Like, some of it isn't poverty, some of it's just more troubles with money instead of like no money, but some of it is like legit like homelessness, so yes, some of it is definitely poverty. Anyway, the way that this is going to work is that we're going to be looking at individual characters at one time. So let's start with Leah. Okay, yes, I am recording this on a different day, that's why I look different today. But I just wanted to say, yesterday when I was recording, I was so tired because I've been out all week and doing shit. And yeah, I just looked dead inside yesterday. So yeah, I guess I just looked dead inside for half this video, but whatever. As we already know, Leah lives in her little cottage just outside of Pelican Town. And as I alluded to earlier in the video, Leah isn't too well off financially speaking. She first alludes to this in her second cutscene when she says, although I have to admit, it's not easy to pay the bills as an artist. She later then reaffirms this narrative later in the cutscene when you tell her that she should sell her art online. However, she says she can't because buying a laptop would be way too expensive for her. Now, okay, you could simply argue that she lives in her cottage by choice, as nature is clearly one of her interests. However, when you marry Leah, she says, "This house is a lot nicer than my old cabin. I don't miss it at all." So sure, she moved from the city to Pelican Town because she hated the city, but she didn't want to live in that tiny ass cabin either. Now, you know that I mentioned that nature and foraging is a huge part of Leah's life, like it's a huge interest to her? Well, this seems all wholesome and nice at first. However, there might be some concerning undertones to this, as there's a possibility that this interest may have developed from necessity rather than passion. Now sure, it could be both. I don't have definitive proof of either. However, looking at Leah's past and present financial situations, I don't think that it's too far off to say that Leah forages for food not just because she loves to, but because she has to. As sometimes it may be hard for Leah to put food on her own table, so she has to go out into the forage to find some. Now, I tell you all of this for more of a confirmation than anything, as when you start to look deeper into Leah's character, it all starts to make sense. Leah lives in a very small cabin outside of town, as it would be much more affordable for her to do so. And remember, this cabin is so small, it doesn't even have things like a toilet or kitchen. She loves foraging in nature, probably because it's a big interest of hers, but it's also necessary for her survival. As I said before, I don't think it's too far of a stretch to say that sometimes she just can't afford food. Especially because when she was living in the city, Leah was far well below well off. And this was with 2 different income sources, because remember, she was living with her ex back in the city and they both worked. Now, I think I said this at the start of the first segment, but this is all done on purpose, as Leah fits a modern representation of the starving artist archetype. And I think this is done because Concerned Ape himself, or should I say Eric Brony, as Eric himself would be filling this archetype right now if Stardew Valley never went on to become record-breakingly big. Now, luckily it did, so we don't have to worry about that, but there's a timeline where he didn't. Now, I hate Elliot just as much as the next person, alright? He's so weird and just incredibly boring. However, as much as it pains me to say, Elliot does definitely have some amount of character to him, and throughout his whole character arc, he's essentially just writing a book. Unfortunately for you guys, I still hate him, and he barely just fits into the segment, so yeah, it's gonna be pretty short. Basically, as I just said, Elliot lives in a small cabin on the beach, like a very small one, even smaller than Leah's cottage, and throughout the entire time, he is writing a book, so I'm guessing he doesn't have any form of employment or income, as he doesn't allude to it at all during his character development. So yeah, on first glance, Elliot very nearly fits into this category, almost the same as Leah. However, because he lacks dialogues about lack of money, his financial situation, or not liking his living situation, yeah, I think he's actually just doing fine. Now, cool, we Captain Obvious here, but Pam and Penny live in a literal trailer. Now I could go into detail of who Pam and Penny are, but I don't need to, as I've already done that in the Dark Side of Stardew Valley Part 2. Instead, I'll just give a little recap. Basically, Pam and Penny live in a trailer because Penny's dad, who I'm guessing was the financial support of the family, left when Penny was very young. And since then, Pam has never been able to recover and financially support Penny. Now, Pam not being able to recover from this mainly stems from 1, the fact that she is a raging alcoholic, and 2, Pam losing her job as a bus driver when the bus broke down. But how did the bus break down? Well, it's because she crashed it. That's right. Someone, Lewis, allowed the town drunk, like the known town drunk of the town, to drive the bus until she crashed it. Now, I would over dramatize this point and stretch it out and make it more obvious and long for the viewer. However, I've already done that in the last episode, so I'm not going to go over it all again. So yeah, TLDR, Penny and Pam actually live in poverty due to paternal negligence and I guess maternal negligence too. Now this is a quick obvious one, but basically Linus is an old man that lives in a tent and forages for his food. I'm not going to talk about him anymore in this segment right now because that's for later, but yeah, Linus is an old man that lives in his tent which only eats foraged food. That's the only food that he gets. So by any normal measure of material wealth, Linus is definitely living in poverty. Now, this one is an obvious but unique case, because our little orphan boy Leo is unsurprisingly homeless, and as a result of this, he's completely broke. However, it's not because of normal circumstance, it's because he lost his parents when they crashed at sea, and as a result of that, he's been stranded on this deserted island. Now, yes, this is very sad, and also the Ginger Island characters kind of raise a number of plot holes, but I've already gone over that in this video. Like, that's not for right now. Right now, we are purely looking at Leo's financial state, and I just want to point out that because Leo does not live in normal circumstance, his financial circumstance doesn't actually impact him at all. As strangely enough, he doesn't even partake in a normal human economy, because, you know, he's kind of stranded alone on a deserted island. So strangely enough, Leo's brokenness does not affect him at all, at least while he's living on the island. I guess sure he can't like buy food and he has to forage it instead, but he doesn't have to deal with the whole unemployment thing and buying a house and normal material purchases and how they impact someone in normal society. So we've been over a few characters already, some obvious, some not so, but what if I told you that there's actually one more character that we need to look at? That character being Gus, who suffers the same fate as many. Now this actually may be a surprise to you because Gus runs the Stardrop Saloon, like he runs his own local business, so you think he'd be doing well. However, in his 4th heart cutscene, he openly admits to having money problems. Now I'm not going to go over the entire cutscene right now, but basically what happens, just a little recap, you walk into the saloon and Gus isn't very happy. He tells you how the saloon's monthly earnings have plummeted because Pam hasn't paid off her tab in weeks. Gus, however, feels bad about asking Pam to pay off her tab as the two of them are friends. And so, because he knows Pam, he knows that she'll get defensive when he asks her about it. And that's when Pam storms into the saloon and you are confronted with 2 dialogue options. The first option is rather aggressive, just overly aggressive, and you lose a couple friendship points with Pam. And the second one is way more empathetic, and so you gain some friendship points with Pam. Either way, the outcome is the same. Pam pays off her tab and you live happily ever after at the end. Well, I mean, not happily ever after for Pam, because she's still a raging alcoholic. So yeah, that cutscene confirms Gus's poor financial state and his relationship with Pam. Like, I do think this cutscene definitely does double down on the fact that Gus isn't always too well off, because if one person in the entire town, if them not paying you off makes your monthly earnings plummet, that's a bit of a problem. Now, I know it's because she's the alcoholic of the town, she drinks the most, but still, relying on one person for your whole business, like it's not a good idea. However, you remember how I said this was a scrapped segment from the second part of Dark Side of Stardew Valley that I made years ago? Oh yeah, there is one important tangent left over from that old script that I want to go over right now because it's interesting, so yeah, I'll just read it off my phone. And maybe even put it up on screen so you can read with me. Oh yeah, the tangent, by the way, was about Gus selling alcohol to Pam and the ethics behind it. With Gus selling alcohol to Pam, I don't think he does it with ill intention, as he himself admits to having this moral battle of feeding an addict their addiction, and on occasion, he even tries to get her to stop drinking so much. Even though it would devastate his business if Pam stopped drinking at the saloon, which is evident by the cutscene we just went over. But you have to remember, addicts are a different breed and not in a good way. Pam can't just stop drinking because addiction is a disease. So say for example, if Gus stopped selling alcohol or he closed down entirely, then Pam would just simply find another way to feed her alcohol addiction. So in this scenario, you simply just can't win. If Gus keeps feeding Pam alcohol, then he's technically enabling her addiction, but if he stopped feeding her alcohol, then not only would his sole source of income probably dry up, but Pam herself would simply find another way to feed her addiction. So this to me, it just seems like a shitty situation that you can't win. So yeah, I guess originally the segment was supposed to be more about the ethics of Gus selling alcohol to Pam, but then I went over and it kind of made it into how Gus is kind of not doing too well, like his financial situation, but I still had that left over. And I thought that was an important just thing to say and think about. So yeah, there you go. Now, I can't spot any more poverty in Pelican Town on like a surface level look, but now that I'm thinking about it, just look at Willie. Like, I know looks aren't everything, but does this look like a wealthy man to you? As most of you probably know by now, Abigail is Pierre's daughter. However, what you might not know is that they have a pretty strained relationship, and this is perfectly demonstrated in Abigail's 6-heart cutscene, which is what we're going to be looking at right now. The cutscene starts off with you walking into the graveyard at night, with Abigail sitting down in front of a gravestone. She then sees you, gets up, and starts laughing before starting a conversation. I guess you're wondering why I'm in the graveyard at this hour. Well, I'm here because it's the best place in town to find some privacy. Abigail then turns away and says, "And I'm all sweaty because I've been practicing my swordsmanship." After a blank reaction, Abigail gets angry at you and says, "Hey, what? You think I'm too weak to swing a blade?" She then apologizes and says, "Sorry, I guess I've been getting a little defensive. You see, I want to explore the mountain caves, but I know it's too dangerous to go there unarmed." You then walk closer to her and get to pick one of 4 dialogue options. If you pick one of the first 2 dialogue options, then you will gain plus 10 friendship points. If you choose the third choice, then Abigail of course gets angry at you and you lose 100 friendship points. And unsurprisingly, the last dialogue option is a neutral one. However, for the sake of this cutscene, we're going to choose the first one. Anyway, after picking the first dialogue option, Abigail says, "See? You understand why I'm out here," and then goes on to explain how she's lived her whole life in the valley and has never done anything memorable. Well, that's actually kind of sad. Abigail then starts saying how she wants to go on an adventure, but then, all of a sudden, the conversation is disturbed by a sudden shout from Pierre. "Abigail?" This of course freaks out Abigail, who shouts, "Dad?" before Pierre suddenly appears from behind a tree. "Your mother wants you to come home and help with dinner," Pierre says angrily. "What are you doing in the graveyard anyway? This is no place for a young lady." Now, on a side note, if I caught my child just hanging out in a graveyard at night, I'd be pretty freaked out too. Now, not because they're a young lady and they don't belong in this place, no. No matter the gender of my child, I'd be pretty freaked out because it's just fucking weird behavior. Like, if I find my child in the middle of a graveyard at night, then I'm running away at top speed because that's some horror movie shit right there. Anyway, after Pierre tells Abigail that she shouldn't be here, basically because she's a woman, Abigail gets extremely upset and shouts, "Mind your own business. You think that I should be at home cooking dinner because I'm a girl, don't you? You're really stuck in the past, Dad." To which Pierre then freaks out, Abigail says, "Let's get out of here," and then storms out of the cutscene. You then follow Abigail while Pierre shouts, "Come back," in desperation, and the cutscene fades to black. The cutscene then resumes, I guess in like a bush or something, where Abigail goes, "Can you believe that my parents were ever young? They don't understand my perspective at all. I know. They grew up in a different era with different values. It still ticks me off sometimes, okay?" Abigail then thanks you for hearing her out and the cutscene ends. Now, I'm actually glad that this ending exists, as it's a lot nicer. Instead of being like, "Dad, you're a misogynist pig, I hate you," it's more of like, "Yeah, okay, you're a bit sexist and I hate the fact that you are sexist. However, I understand that the reason that you are stems from the environment that you grew up in. And so, you have been conditioned by society at large to have different values on what a young lady should be than to me. And I really appreciate that added depth, as you can't really change anything without understanding the other person. Otherwise it will just be pure hatred and you won't be able to get past that." So yeah, if Pierre simply said that Abigail's mother wanted her to come in and help with dinner, then there would be some plausible deniability around it. Like, for example, you could say, maybe Abigail's mother just wants her only child to come help her cook dinner. That doesn't seem like an unreasonable request. However, from Pierre's later statements and Abigail's reaction, Pierre's request definitely comes more from a place of, "You're a woman and this is your job," than anything. But like, it's Pierre, he's a shitty human being, so really none of this surprises me at this point.
Now, earlier in the video, Mossy mentioned Gunther during Professor Snail's segment due to how mysterious he is, so let's talk about him. Gunther is the curator of the museum, and in your first cutscene with him, he tells you that the last museum curator owner guy ended up taking all the artifacts in the museum and running off with them, embarrassingly leaving Pelican Town's museum display completely empty. Now, this is obviously just a funny explanation for what artifacts and minerals are and why you have to donate them to the museum, and it also gives you an excuse to once again do everything in this town, by this point becoming a literal unlicensed archaeologist, just so you can bring the museum's display back to its former glory. Now, this may be a little bit of a tangent, but here's where it gets interesting. After this intro cutscene, it turns out that Gunther has no schedule and never leaves the museum at all. He also has no relations with any other character in the game, and is only mentioned once or twice in dialogue by Vincent, Jazz, and Penny. And this is only because Penny takes the kids, Jazz and Vincent, to the museum once a week. This lack of human activity in Gunther's life is so suspicious to some people that the most popular fan theory for Gunther is that he is simply a ghost. Now, I of course don't believe this theory, because it contains more plot holes than Gunther himself, and it uses unsubstantiated claims as evidence. Basically, Mossy already looked into this theory in detail in his Fan Theories Iceberg Part 1 video, which you should definitely check out, by the way, so I won't explain it properly here. But yeah, the fact that Gunther's most popular fan theory suggests that he's a ghost is definitely quite telling of Gunther's character, or lack thereof.
As I stated earlier in the video, Linus is a homeless man that lives in a tent up in the mountains. But if you don't know anything more about Linus, let me just list out these facts for you. Linus is a homeless man that lives in his tent up in the mountains. Most of the villagers are wary about him, probably because he's homeless and, you know, like the stigma around homeless people, etc. Except for the wizard, who is his only friend, which coincidentally, the wizard is also in the same boat as Linus, where everyone in all the townsfolk are also cautious of him. He helps you whenever you faint in the mines, which this, along with some dialogue, confirms that he's been down in the mines and explored them and is used to doing that kind of stuff. He has a strange connection to nature. This is evident by like basically all his dialogues. But what's interesting about this is that the wizard, remember his only friend, who also shares the same boat with townsfolk not liking him, the wizard also has a strange connection to nature, so that's, yeah, I guess some food for thought. Okay, this one's the most messed up. Someone throws rocks at his tent at night. Like, this is confirmed. This is confirmed from a piece of dialogue that Linus says. And I guess this person does it to further disadvantage him by either destroying his tent or just being a nuisance at night. Which, like, it's never confirmed who it would be, and it's not even, like, a clear candidate. Because, this sounds like some, like, the behavior of, like, a dropkick, like, teenager, right? However, there's no teenagers in the town. There's only kids and young adults, and then, like, old people and middle-aged people. There's no, like, teenagers. And so I guess you kind of have to go and look at who's the biggest jerk in the town. And I guess that would be Morris. Remember, Morris is the general manager for the Joja Corp store in Pelican Town. And I guess there's some reasons for and against both sides. So let's just start with 4. I guess, well, 1, Morris is a very big jerk. He just loves to be a dick to people. And 2, he works for Joja. Remember, Joja is a soulless big corporate entity, and he's the manager for it. So, you know, therefore he's probably also somewhat soulless and greedy and caught up in the whole capitalistic nature of everything. And so throwing rocks at Linus's tent, in other words, would be throwing rocks at someone who opposes what he stands for. So if you think that Morris is the one throwing rocks at Linus's tent, I guess it's not the worst theory in the world. However, this also doesn't make sense because, like, he doesn't own fucking Joja Corp, he's just the manager of it. And although he's a jerk, he doesn't quite seem like the type to, at night, just go out of his way to go up into the mountains. Remember, he's up in the mountains, he'd have to do a fair walk. Go up into the mountains, find the tent of the one homeless man in town, and then throw rocks at him for some reason. Like, that, what do you achieve from that? There's also, like, no proof or even clues or hints of them doing that in cutscenes or dialogue or anything. Like, not even Linus knows who throws the rocks at his tent. So yeah, it just doesn't make sense. And I guess the other annoying guy in the town that I could think of off the top of my head was George. However, he's literally a cripple. Like, he has to use the wheelchair to move, you know, because of a mining accident. So thinking that a senior citizen would just roll up, like literally roll up to the mountains at night to throw rocks at a homeless man that, like, none of them have beef with, like, personal beef that we know of. It just doesn't make sense. So yeah, someone throws rocks at Linus's tent. This is actually just a big mystery. I genuinely, after researching this game for hundreds of hours and putting out theories on this channel that have got hundreds of thousands of views that were well thought out, I cannot for the life of me, like, conjure up a proper reasonable answer for who throws the rocks at his tent. So yeah, I have no clue. Anyway, that was a bit of a tangent. But the next Linus fact is that apparently, according to Linus, he is homeless by choice. Which is a bit odd. Like, yeah, right, buddy. You're homeless by choice and I'm 5'2" by choice. Like, yeah, we totally got to choose that, didn't we? Like, I don't know. To me, it kind of seems like a weird cope. As some people pointed out in my Linus video, the homeless by choice thing might just be a cope. Like, by circumstance, he ended up homeless. But then to cope with the whole thing, he said to himself that, like, oh, I'm homeless by choice, guys. Like, yeah. So yeah, option A is that's just a weird cope. But there's actually a second option, which is option B, which is actually telling the truth. which is interesting to think about. Because on like surface level, look, this seems all very weird and yeah, it just seems like a cope. But when you compile all the things that I just said about him, like him not being liked by the townspeople, being having a great connection to nature, being great friends with the wizard, who also has those other two things in common with him, and like being homeless by choice and going to the mines and all those kind of things, when you piece them all together into a fan theory, they actually make sense. And I've actually already done this in my video called Solving the Mystery of Linus and M. Jasper. As in this video, I pieced together all these things plus more into one big comprehensible video that reveals the identity of M. Jasper and fully explains Linus's story. Now, you're probably thinking that this is just some shameless plug, but I'm serious. I am not saying this just because it's my video and I want you to watch it. I'm serious in saying that this video does actually really help solve Linus's mystery. So if you're interested in who Linus really is and also M. Jasper, maybe you've heard about them before or maybe you haven't, go check out this video after because it's one of my best. Like, okay, it's really old, so my voiceover and editing wasn't the best, but like, because of the information within it and the conclusion that I draw, it's probably one of my favorite videos. Now, usually this is where this type of segment would end. As usually, I look at all the pieces of the puzzle and try and piece them together into some kind of fan theory or something. For example, like what I've already done with Linus. I think I'm having a stroke trying to say this word. I just try to say it 30 times and now it doesn't sound like a word anymore. However, Linus's mysterious nature and overall ambiguity, I think that's how you say it, might actually be intentional, as maybe his character isn't actually meant to be taken literally. Maybe, just maybe, his character is actually a symbol for A, the stigma around homeless people, which can be expanded into B, the stigma around societal outcasts, such as him, you know, for being homeless, and the wizard, I guess, for being fucking weird, but we'll get into that later. And C, the Industrial Revolution and its consequences. Now, of course, I kind of say this in a lighthearted manner, but also not really, because Linus's overall message is that he is a character who has a great connection to nature, and this connection to nature feeds Linus's soul with way more fulfillment than any of this corporate bullshit could ever. Linus living alone in nature, just sitting there connecting with it, really provides him way more fulfillment than he could ever achieve living in modern society. And this makes sense, as really, we're not built for the modern world, we're built for nature, as that's where we come from. Now, if you know me, IRL, let's just be honest for a second, I'm probably on the spectrum, okay? And as a result, I often take random things that just completely random way too literally when they shouldn't be. And so I've always looked at Stardew Valley fan theories head on and as logically as possible. As why shouldn't I? That's just simply how my brain works. Before the segment, I'd never really thought about these theories or anything like that in a different way. However, now that I finally have, I can start to see just how much like hidden symbolism is in Stardew Valley, as not all of the characters are meant to be taken literally. Like, some are literal representations of real world characters, but not all of them. Some characters are more of an amalgamation of multiple things, and are instead references to various topics and issues in the real world. Okay, so there's actually a couple more little dark things in Stardew Valley, but they either, 1, aren't long enough to have their own segment, or 2, are more like not really that dark, they're more like grey side material, which you'd know what I'm talking about if you watch the second part of this series. Or 3, they're just both. So yeah, this is going to be a very quick segment of me just going through some stuff. So number 1, the wizard is sus. Now, he keeps constant surveillance of all the townsfolk, like that's weird. He is weirdly magical, which I've already talked about. He has that weird connection with nature. Again, you can just watch the Linus video if you want a more in-depth explanation. But yeah, he has all these magical powers and they're very mysterious and he never tells you why he has them or how he has them, and it's, yeah, very magical, weird, and mysterious. And also number 3 is that he went through a divorce with the witch. Like there's a witch in the game. There's like a 1% chance in your farm or something like that she can come over and curse your animals or some shit. I think she just spawns a void egg in your coop. Nothing really bad. But the reason why she exists, according to the game, is that she used to be the wizard's wife. However, something happened and they like divorced and she got really mad, and now she's like, she was so angry. She got so angry about the whole thing that she turned into like a witch, ugly witch, and now runs through the countryside cursing everything in a way. Which this kind of raises some interesting questions, like why did they get a divorce? Who's at fault? Is it one of the other? Are they both at fault? Because we don't really know anything about the witch. However, if you remember all the way back to the Dark Side of Stardew Valley Part 1, I'm pretty sure that this was the first segment in that video. But basically, Abigail is the wizard's daughter. You remember this? It's a popular fan theory that is basically confirmed in the game that says Abigail is not Pierre's daughter, but instead the wizard's daughter, because Caroline cheated on Pierre with the wizard. However, because of the wizard and witch thing, what possibly could have happened is that not only did Caroline cheat on Pierre with the wizard, but the wizard cheated on the witch with Caroline. Like, it's coming full circle now. Now, we can't confirm this because we don't know when they were together. This could have happened after the witch and wizard split, but if they were together when this happened, then this is a surefire way to cause a divorce. All right, second one I'm going to be looking at is Demetrius. Demetrius is a bitch-ass parent. I already looked at this in part 2, but I just wanted to say it again and emphasize it because, yeah, he is just a bitch. Vincent. Okay, Vincent has some sad dialogue that we're going to look at now. Actually, I have to explain. Remember, okay, Vincent lives with Jodi, Kent, and Sam. Sam's his older brother, Kent's his dad, and Jodi is his mother. Now, we already looked at Kent and Jodi in the first part, so you should remember this, but basically, Jodi hates her life, she's depressed, and Kent, he comes back from the Great War that's going on in year 2, and he, of course, comes back severely traumatized. And when you have that in mind and you read these dialogues from Vincent, it's very sad. Dad's coming back soon. I hope he brings me some toys. Dad's not around much. I miss playing with him. This is before Kent returns. Then after he returns, he says, I'm glad Dad's back, but he's different than I remember. And then this final 8-heart plus dialogue from Vincent says, Dad seems weird since he came back. I wonder what happened to him. He doesn't want to play with me anymore. Which, that's so sad. Like, yeah, that's really sad. I don't think I need to further dramatize or point out that at all. You can see why that's so sad and probably emphasize with it. So we will instead look at this last dialogue from him that says, you're not as boring as most grown-ups. That's when he says that when he's talking to you, but I want to point this out because this is probably a reflection of Jodi, because remember, Jodi hates her life, she's depressed, she's also probably a pretty boring person to Vincent. So this dialogue's more of a reflection of his mother than anything. The last 2 little things I want to say is that Emily and Haley's parents are never home. Now, they're not kids or even teenagers. You can marry them, so I'm guessing they're at least young adults. But yeah, they just live in their parents' house still, but their parents are never there. Apparently they're out somewhere. I forgot the law. I think it's like a vague dialogue from one of the 2 of them. But yeah, no, that's kind of more grey side material. It's just kind of weird. Like, what are they doing? Where are they? Are the parents still together? I don't know. Just, you know, many questions could spawn from this. And the last thing from this is about Alex. Now, I think I looked at him in the part 2. Yeah, I think in Darkside part 2, Yama did a segment on him. But that was about him, like, his mother dying and shit. We're not going to look at that right now. We already looked at that. What we're going to look at right now is that Alex has big aspirations to make it in, what is it called? I don't remember what it's called. Basically, it's like a sport that the town loves. I guess it's their national sport. Their national sport in this game, I'll just put it up on screen if I remember if it's in the game, but yeah. Alex essentially wants to become a big player at whatever their national sport is. However, this is in grey side material because I don't think he ever makes it. I think he eventually just has to give up stream, which is kind of sad, but that's life. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that is every dark tidbit in Stardew Valley. Now, I do personally have a tendency to either brush over small details or like randomly fixate on them entirely, so yeah, I could have missed something. If I did, comment it down below just so I'm aware of it. However, I'm pretty sure that is every single major dark aspect of Stardew Valley covered. And with that, I do sadly have to announce that the Dark Side of Stardew Valley series has finally come to an end after like 3 years or something. And this is because I won't be making a part 4 because, as I said, I've already gone over everything. The only reason why I would ever make a part 4 is because if Concerned Ape adds a ton of new characters with big dark backgrounds in a newer update, then it would make sense to put it in. But considering I've spent hundreds of hours researching him and his game, I can confidently tell you that he won't. It's way too time intensive for what you get out of it. That's already why he doesn't add new NPCs to the game. Like, okay, he does occasionally, like in Ginger Island, he added 3. However, only one of them really has like a lot of cutscenes and backstory. One of them is literally just Gunther, so he has nothing. And then the other one is Birdie, who he gives you like 1 or 2 cutscenes. Yeah, it gives you 2 cutscenes and a couple dialogues. Like, adding in fully fledged characters is like a very time intensive job. And so I can confidently end the series knowing that he won't add heaps and heaps of more characters. Like if he adds 1, boo-hoo, who cares? I know I don't. He would have to add a lot, like I don't know, 5 or 10 characters for me to warrant an entire video. So yes, this series is coming to an end. However, don't worry if you love this kind of series. Don't worry because I already started the Dark Side of Stardew Valley expanded series, which I've already done 1 part, and I think there's at least another one. There could be 2 more parts, but I'm pretty sure there's already another part that I haven't done yet. Of course, knowing, you know, how I roll, I just don't upload for months at times sometimes. So yeah, that series still needs to finish. And I also have some new Dark Side adjacent videos in the works that I really want to do. Like they're not exactly a dark side. I mean, some of them are dark side videos, but some of them are related to the dark side series, name, franchise, whatever you call it, in some capacity. So although the Dark Side of Stardew Valley series is ending, and as a result I'll make a full movie video that I'll upload to YouTube so it's easier to watch, I'll cut out all the crap. From the death of the series births new life, as I'm back on my shit again and I've actually found ways to consistently make videos. Also, let me just get on my Wendigoon shit real quick and just from the bottom of my heart, thank you for watching. I just want to say in 2021, I uploaded the first video and this was so long ago, I had like a couple hundred subs, maybe, I don't know, 400 or 500 subs max. That's how much I had when the video was uploaded. And when I uploaded the video, it was doing normal. It was getting, you know, a couple hundred views maybe, and then it can just completely died because what happened is the day I uploaded it, YouTube went down, and when YouTube came back on, it kind of just had killed my video because YouTube had been down and just taken it out of the algorithm, which was very unfortunate because I spent so long on the Dark Side of Stardew Valley video and I just knew, you know, as a YouTube creator, sometimes you just know when a video is going to do well, and I just knew that video was going to do well, so I was just so disheartened when it didn't do well. Now, I think that was in May. However, in, I think, July of that same year, I uploaded the All Your Stardew Valley Pain in one video, and yeah, the rest is really just history. As that gave me like 100k views on my channel in one day, it was something crazy like that. Remember, at this point, my biggest video probably had like 30k views, so 100k on one video in a day was just like mind-blowing. I actually might have been like 70 or 80k, but it was still something really insanely huge at the time. And when you get one big video, all the rest of your videos on the channel go up. And so that finally revived the Dark Side of Stardew Valley video. And nowadays, as I'm recording this, part 1 sits over 1.8 million views, and part 2 sits over 700,000 views. So once again, thank you. This series has honestly changed the course of my life forever. And I'm not actually being dramatic when I say that. I'm being quite real.